Early 1980s, South Bronx. A DJ drops a record that sounds like it fell from a spaceship. Robotic beats, synthetic melodies, and bass like a thunderclap. The crowd freezes for half a second and then, boom, the floor erupts. Hip-hop just met the machines, and nothing will ever be the same. In 1980, hip-hop's backbone was the break. So funk records, block parties, and MCs hosting the neighborhood. Rappers were just learning to walk, and most studio sessions still relied on live bands and human drummers. Computers were nowhere to be found, but on the horizon, a new sound was gearing up. Drum machines and synths, once the toys of experimental Europeans, were creeping into American studios. Kraftwerk's grooves were slipping into vinyl crates. A Bronx visionary heard the future, thinking, what if these robot rhythms could talk street? Today, we follow that spark as it jumped from Düsseldorf to the South Bronx and exploded into electro, a sound that hardwired hip-hop to the 808. Let's talk about Afrika Bambaataa, the Bronx visionary. Back in the late 70s, most DJs were digging through the same crates. So James Brown, Parliament, and old funk cuts. But Bam, his record collection was wild. Rock, Caribbean music, and even weird electronic stuff coming out of Europe. And then he finds this one German record, Kraftwerk's Trans-Europe Express. One night, he drops it into a Bronx set. The crowd freezes for a second, like, what is this space music stuff? Then the groove kicks in, and suddenly, everyone just gets it. It worked! Afrika Bambaataa wasn't just spinning records, he was experimenting in real time. He called his movement the Zulu Nation, built on peace, unity, and knowledge. But musically, he was fearless. Other DJs were watching, thinking, can he really get away with this? He just did. That night proved something. The Bronx was ready for the future. By 1981, Afrika Bambaataa teams up with Baker and John Robie. Their mission was simple and crazy for the time. Make a hip-hop record with just machines. No live band and no disco samples. Just a drum computer, some synthesizers, a vocoder, and straight Bronx attitude. They were not copying Europe. They were remixing it, reprogramming it for the streets. So here's the real hero of the story, the Roland's TR-808. It came out in 1980, and it didn't even try to sound like a real drum kit. It sounded like a dream version of one. A deep booming kick, sharp little snare, and hi-hats that hissed and danced. It was weird, it was synthetic. And that's exactly what made it exciting. A lot of musicians back then thought it sounded fake. But to the right people, it sounded like the future. For the first time, you could actually program a rhythm, design a groove instead of just playing one. The machine didn't replace the human, it became part of the groove. Around that same time, synthesizers and sequencers were getting cheaper. You didn't need a big studio anymore. All you needed was imagination and a few blinking boxes. That's where Afrika Bambaataa, Baker and John Robie come in. They head into this little New York spot called Intergalactic Studios. Perfect name, right? Someone hits the 808 start button and suddenly the room fills up with this rolling robotic funk. Over that groove, Robie starts layering these shiny synth lines inspired by Kraftwerk. Not just sampling, actually replaying them, so giving them this Bronx attitude. Then MC Globe steps up with this new kind of flow. Tight, mechanical, and locked perfectly to the machine. And of course, they throw in that vocoder, the robot voice we all know and love. Smooth, metallic, and completely hypnotic. When they hit play, they know they've got something special. That track becomes Planet Rock. It wasn't disco, it wasn't funk. It was hip-hop, built entirely out of machines. Baker went home that night and told his wife, "We just made history." And he wasn't wrong. When the song dropped in June 1982, it blew up. Radio, clubs, charts, everywhere. For the first time, hip-hop had gone fully electronic. Planet Rock became a bridge connecting two worlds. On one side, you had hip-hop, raw energy, MCs, Bronx block parties. On the other side, you had European electronic music, Kraftwerk's cold precision and sequenced rhythms. And right there in the middle, they met and became something new. That fusion gave birth to electro, where the machine itself became the groove soul and the MC became the pilot. Whenever a new sound hits, the first question is always, can it travel? With electro, the answer was instant. Absolutely. New York producers picked up the blueprint and started putting their own spin on it. You had Warp 9 with Nunk, this slick sci-fi groove that blended synthetic glide with straight-up funk attitude. Then, Planet Patrol came through with Play at Your Own Risk, produced by Baker. Even Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 got in on it, with Scorpio. No rapping, just pure machine funk. talkbox voices, robotic bass, and tight 808 drums. People knew machines could groove just as hard as people. The vibe was unmistakable. We were already dancing in tomorrow's living room. Then comes Detroit. While the Bronx was flipping Kraftwerk for hip-hop crowds, a young kid named Juan Atkins was doing his own experiments back home in the Motor City. His group Cybertron released Alleys of Your Mind in 1981, a year before Planet Rock. It's darker, colder, but still funky. The sound of factory machines dreaming. That track basically predicted techno before anyone ever used the word. So when Planet Rock blew up, Detroit didn't copy it, it recognized it. The signal was already there. By 1983, electro was everywhere. Some producers even dropped the MCs entirely and went full instrumental. Parrish released Hip Hop Bebop, a shimmering, spacey track that sounded like you were inside an arcade. Then there was Hashim with Al Na Fiish, that It's Time hook that every breakdancer on earth knows. And then came Newcleus with Jam on Revenge and later Jam on It. Those songs added fun to the mix. High-pitched voices, video game sounds, playful hooks that kids could actually sing. Electro wasn't all serious sci-fi. It could be joyful too, and still hit hard. The sound started spreading into other genres. Baker and John Robie teamed up with New Order on Confusion, mixing British post-punk with 808 beats straight from New York. Freeze dropped IOU, turning electro grooves into radio-friendly dance music. And maybe the wildest crossover of all, Herbie Hancock's Rockit. A jazz legend meets scratch DJs, puts turntables front and center, and drops a music video full of dancing robot mannequins. It wins a Grammy and ends up on MTV every day. That moment made it clear. The machine sound wasn't just a trend. Electro didn't just blow up on the radio, it rewired how people move. Breakdancing suddenly had its own perfect soundtrack. Those mechanical beats matched the moves perfectly. The 808 kick gave power to windmills, the hi-hats framed the arm tuts, and those robotic voices, they became the soundtrack of robot arms. If you carried a sheet of cardboard in 1983, chances are Planet Rock or something like it was what you were dancing to. Watch any old footage. It's almost primal. Machine-made beats and human bodies answering back in sync. The look changed too. Afrika Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force started performing in these wild, futuristic outfits. Part Zulu warrior, part sci-fi traveler. Flyers had spaceships, wires, and lasers. Graffiti started to look like circuit boards. Hip-hop, which started out grounded in funk and soul, suddenly pointed straight to the future. That's Afrofuturism in motion. Artists imagining a future where Black and Latin kids weren't just surviving tech, they're owning it. And it wasn't just about the look or the music. It changed who was in the room. Downtown met uptown. At clubs like the Roxy, new wave kids, breakers, punks, art school kids, and Bronx crews all danced under the same lights. The irony in all this, it was the machines that actually brought the people together. Then, the movement went global. Breakdancing hit London youth centers, Paris plazas, Tokyo TV shows, sidewalks in Rio. Everywhere you looked, kids were spinning, popping, and robot walking to electro. But like every explosion, it burned hot and fast. By 1984, rap started shifting. Run DMC came in hard. Stripped down beats, heavy guitars, and no more shiny synthesizers. Not long after, samplers take over, cutting up old funk and soul instead of programming new rhythms. Electro didn't die, it just split off into new forms. In Miami, the 808 became religion, birthing Miami bass. It's all sub-boom and a whole lot of attitude. In New York, freestyle took the same DNA and spun it into Latin-flavored dance pop. And in Detroit and Chicago, the same machine pulse evolved again, into techno and house. Those producers straight up said it. That early electro era gave them permission to let the grid groove. Fast forward to now, and that sound is still everywhere. The 808 isn't just a drum machine anymore. It's basically a global instrument. You hear it in trap, in pop, in K-pop, in Afrobeats. That idea that hip-hop could take a new technology and flip it into style, that's the heart of electro. 2 years. That's all it took. From 1980 to 1982, hip-hop made a huge leap. It decided to trust the machine. And instead of losing its soul, it actually leveled up. When hip-hop met technology, it didn't become less human. It became more expressive. It used the machines to amplify what was already there. That was Afrofuturism in real time, taking the hope and creativity of the Bronx and plugging it straight into the future. And it proved something wild. An 808 kick could move people the same way a slap bass or a live drummer could. Maybe even more. Remember that first Bronx party we talked about? The moment where the crowd wasn't sure and then everything clicked? That's the story of electro right there. Every time you hear that heavy 808 rumble in a pop song, and every time a breaker hits a perfect freeze on beat, you're still hearing the aftershock of that original explosion.